Have you ever stopped to think about how just one decision, maybe even a business decision, could actually shake up alliances between countries, change a whole nation's direction on the world stage?
It's a powerful question, isn't it? How fragile some of these long-standing ties can be.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. We're taking a really close look at the relationship between, well, two global giants, India and the United States. It's been evolving.
Tumultuous at times, you could say.
Definitely. We're going to unpack how this feeling of betrayal over trade seems to have sparked a really big shift in India's global strategy, a decisive pivot.
And we've got some fascinating source material to draw on for this.
We do. We've looked at transcripts from various YouTube channels, places like Momentum Mindset, Alexander Mercouris, First Post, Republic World. So you're getting a mix of views.
Yeah, analysts, former officials, financial experts,
Yeah.
a real cross-section.
Our mission here is to help you cut through all the chatter, understand the emotional side, the economic fallout from these trade tensions.
And also explore where India went next, right, these new partnerships.
Precisely. And what it all means for global trade, for alliances more broadly. Basically, it's your shortcut to getting up to speed on this really pivotal moment. So let's jump in.
Okay.
You know, it really wasn't that long ago that the India-U.S. bond seemed, well, almost unbreakable.
It felt that way. There was a lot of optimism.
I mean, think about those scenes. Howdy Modi in Houston.
Yeah, I knew.
Massive crowds.
Huge energy. And Nama's Trump in Delhi, too. The banners, the speeches.
Yeah. There was this real hope, wasn't there? A sense that these two democracies were going to partner up on everything. Science, tech, trade, defense.
It really did feel like a potential golden age, a
Yeah.
proper alignment. But things changed quickly.
So what was the tipping point, the immediate catalyst?
Well, the sources point squarely at Donald Trump's decision to impose that massive 25% tariff on India.
25%. That's steep.
It is. And it wasn't just seen as a number, you know. The perception was that this was deliberate messaging. Like, the U.S. was saying, from now on, it's only about our own benefit.
Less like a negotiation, more like a unilateral move.
Exactly. It felt less cooperative, more declarative.
And the emotional impact of that in India, how did that land?
Oh, it landed hard. The sources talk about Prime Minister Modi's silent anger. You know, he's often called the silent lion,
Right.
outwardly quiet, but his eyes apparently held this sense of deep betrayal from a friend he once called a strategic partner.
Wow. Betrayal from a friend, that's strong language.
It is. And it wasn't just at the top. Ordinary Indian people who had really bought into the idea of America as a true friend started saying things like, looks like we were alone in that friendship. Kind of heartbreaking, really.
That really drives home how a trade policy can feel personal, can it? And this wasn't just abstract stuff for leaders, right? This hit regular people.
Absolutely. The sources give concrete examples, like Ramesh, a small exporter in Punjab. His glove exports to the U.S. just stopped. Coal.
Just like that.
Just like that. Or think of Sheila, an IT engineer in Bangalore. Her dream was an H-1B visa to work in the U.S. Suddenly, that dream started looking much less likely.
And these weren't just isolated cases, I assume?
No, thousands like them. Their hopes, their plans, directly impacted by that tariff. It was very real for a lot of folks.
And it sounds like maybe this tapped into some older feelings, too. Like, this wasn't the first time India felt let down by the U.S.
That's a key point the sources bring up. There's this historical undercurrent, this feeling that America had turned its back not once, but again and again.
Like when?
They specifically mentioned 1971. During the Bangladesh War, India felt pretty isolated then. And again after the '98 nuclear tests.
Oh, okay.
So this tariff wasn't just a new economic problem. It kind of reopened those old wounds, that narrative of being left alone when things got tough.
That adds a whole other layer. Now, Raymond Vickery, he's a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce. He had some thoughts on this break. What was his take?
Vickery basically described Trump's approach as transactional, purely deal-making, not cooperative partnership building.
And destructive, he said.
Yeah, he called it destructive of the world order. He felt Trump made a major miscalculation, didn't understand crucial things like the cultural weight of dairy in India, for instance.
The sensitivities there.
Exactly. Or India's whole journey out of colonialism. Vickery saw Trump's mindset as more about real estate deals, you know, self-aggrandizement, not the careful diplomacy needed for such a key relationship.
So faced with this feeling of betrayal, this transactional approach, how did Modi respond? What did that silent anger actually lead to?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. That anger didn't just fizzle out, it hardened into a new direction for India. a very clear, decisive path.
Which was
The core idea, according to the sources, was choosing country over alliance.
country over alliance,
Yeah.
meaning
Meaning they weren't going to say, hit back with tit-for-tat tariffs immediately, but they were going to seriously rethink who their reliable partners were. Where did India's true interests lie now?
Okay, so if country over alliance was the new motto, what did that look like on the ground? Where did India pivot?
They started making some very noticeable strategic shifts. First, there was a clear turn back towards Russia.
Russia. Okay, why?
Well, practical reasons like cheaper oil and important defense deals. But also, there's history there. They recalled Russia's support back when India was developing its nuclear capability.
When others were trying to stop them.
Right. And apparently, Russia said, we stand with you. So it wasn't just about convenience. It felt like re-engaging with an old, sometimes complicated, but historically supportive partner.
Interesting. And besides Russia?
A much deeper engagement with the Middle East. Countries like the UAE and Saudi Arabia, they're not just oil suppliers anymore.
Yeah.
No, they're now seen as trusted partners in trade and technology.
Yeah.
You see Indian brands doing really well in Dubai now. It's a sign of, well, hard work paying off and a much stronger economic connection.
And Africa, too, I understand. India's role there has been growing.
Yes, significantly. And in a different way, perhaps, than some historical powers. India's been focused on building things, hospitals, schools, creating hope.
So development focused.
Exactly. And it's resonated. African leaders are quoted saying things like, India is not just a partner, it is our brother. That's a very different tone.
It certainly is. But maybe the most unexpected turn described in the sources is with China.
Ah, yes. That is quite the development.
Tension to trade. How does that work?
Well, the sources frame it as pragmatism. Once there was tension, now there is trade. It's described as wisdom where emotions step aside and national interest leads the way.
So even with a major rival, if it serves India's strategic goals.
They'll find a way to engage. It really underscores this determination to carve out their own path, independent of traditional alignments.
And how has all this maneuvering affected India's standing globally?
It's definitely boosted it. India is seen much more as a leader within the BRICS group. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
And a voice for the global south.
A very strong voice. There's this powerful image described from the G20 summit. While others were maybe still looking primarily to the U.S., India basically held its own seat. The message was, we will unite the world, but we will bow to no one.
Quite assertive.
Very. The narrative emerging is that India picked up a 100% self-respect. It's seen now as a genuinely rising power in diplomacy, defense, and development.
Yet despite this newfound assertiveness, the official Indian government reaction to the U.S. tariff itself was called extremely restrained. Why so cautious?
Well, part of it was procedural almost. Officials apparently said they hadn't received any formal communication from Trump beyond his posts on Truth Social.
His social media platform.
Right, so they were sort of waiting for an official diplomatic channel to open up,
Mhm.
which highlights a kind of disconnect in how things were being handled.
But they weren't just rolling over, were they?
Oh, absolutely not. Their resolve was clear. They stated they would defend Indian interests, especially for the medium and small businesses and enterprises hit by the tariff. So firm, but measured. Not escalating, but standing their ground.
Which brings up the point about things like agriculture and dairy. Why is India so protective there, even if it complicates trade talks? Uday Kotak, the financial expert, had insights on this, right?
He did. Kotak stressed the domestic angle.
Mm.
India has to protect its farmers. They are a massive core electoral constituency.
Ah, the politics.
Exactly. And they're very vulnerable to inflation, to import competition. So defending agriculture isn't just trade policy. It's fundamental domestic politics. It's about local interests, millions of livelihoods.
So it's non-negotiable in many ways.
Pretty much. And Kotak also had a broader point about India's strategy overall.
What was that?
He argued India needs to be realistic about U.S. power, but also understand that trust, well, it's fragile. It can disappear quickly.
So his advice...
His main advice was for India to avoid getting squeezed in this crossfire between the U.S. and China, to really focus on its own journey, independent of these two. Strategic autonomy, essentially.
charting its own course.
Precisely. Self-preservation and sovereignty.
And a key part of enabling that independent journey is strengthening the domestic economy, right? There was talk of turbocharging it.
Yes, that was a strong recommendation from the sources. The idea is that India's biggest strength is its internal market, its domestic part of the economy.
So how do you turbocharge it?
Suggestions included maybe injecting steroids, figuratively speaking, things like capital support to mid-sector management, basically leveraging India's strong fundamentals, its phenomenal macroeconomic stability, to build resilience against external shocks and fuel growth from within.
Makes sense. Okay, let's widen the lens a bit. This whole tariff strategy, this transactional approach, it wasn't just India feeling it, was it?
Not at all. It was a much broader pattern. Trump used tariffs quite widely.
Right.
Brazil, for example, got hit with 50% tariffs.
50%. Why?
Yeah. For a mix of reasons, apparently. Some seemed linked to things like Brazil prosecuting a former president or Supreme Court decisions, things not directly tied to, say, trade imbalances.
So, using tariffs almost like sanctions.
That's the argument analysts were making, that tariffs are normally an economic and taxation policy tool. But Trump seemed to be using them punitively as a way to exert pressure, which they called completely inappropriate, more like a weapon than a negotiation tactic.
And his view on the BRICS group also seemed, well, erratic.
Extremely. You mentioned unpredictable volatility, and that fits. One minute, he's claiming BRICS is dead after a summit.
Right.
The next, he's calling it a mortal enemy to the dollar and the U.S. trading system, promising he won't let it destroy the dollar.
It's hard to build policy around that kind of swing.
Exactly. It creates uncertainty. Nobody knows what's coming next.
Now, one aspect that was particularly jarring, especially from an Indian perspective, was Trump's apparent outreach to Pakistan. The sources called this the most painful part.
Yes, that caused a lot of consternation. For India, Pakistan is seen as a country known for breeding terror, a nation responsible for violence against Indians, for having spilled Indian blood.
A very sensitive history.
Extremely. And then suddenly, Trump is praising Pakistan's role in peace processes, talking about investing in their oil industry.
How's that relieve?
As a deep betrayal. It made people question everything. Was Howdy Modi just for show? Was it all just a political stunt?
And Raymond Vickery weighed in on this too.
He did. He basically doubled down, saying Trump just does not understand the dynamics of security in South Asia. Thinks in terms of those real estate deals and self-aggrandizement, not the complex realities on the ground.
So this whole approach, the tariffs, the unpredictability, communicating via Truth Social, it sounds like what some called government by tantrum.
That phrase was used. It left other countries, including India, constantly waiting for clear official messages, unsure of what U.S. policy actually was from one day to the next.
And the impact on global trade overall.
Chaos, basically. This chaotic way of slapping different rates of tariffs against different countries just created massive disruption and confusion in world trade.
With real costs.
Absolutely. The risk is ramping up costs across the board, which could ultimately mean higher prices in the United States for consumers. It disrupts supply chains, makes planning impossible.
What are the longer-term worries analysts highlighted if this continues? What's the end game?
The big concern is that it's counterproductive. Countries that need or want to trade will simply find ways around the U.S. They'll circumvent the U.S. market, get around sanctions.
And build alternatives.
Exactly. They'll actively develop trade and financial systems outside the dollar and American-led trading system. So, ironically, these policies aimed at asserting U.S. dominance could actually accelerate the move away from it, lead to exactly the opposite result of what Trump said he wanted.
A real potential boomerang effect.
Potentially, yes. There was also concern that some of the thinking behind these policies seemed outdated, like General Kellogg apparently believing Russian oligarchs could easily pressure Putin. If these assumptions go wrong, analysts warned, Trump would likely bear the blame.
Okay, so let's bring this all together. What does this complex story mean for you, listening to this deep dive?
Well, fundamentally, it shows how that U.S.-India relationship, which looked so promising, was seriously tested. That shift from shared values towards purely transactional interests created a fracture.
A fracture felt beyond just those two countries.
Definitely. And I think the key takeaway is how quickly that foundation of trust can crumble when national interests are suddenly viewed through a very narrow, almost purely economic or deal-making lens.
And India's response is also crucial here, not loud retaliation.
No, but a quiet, very firm strategic shift. A reorientation towards a world with multiple power centers, prioritizing self-reliance, national interest, and building these new pragmatic alliances. India is very clearly defining its own way forward now.
So here's something for you to think about as we wrap up. When trust breaks down between nations, is that just the end of a particular chapter? Or could it be the kind of, well, necessary heartbreak that actually pushes countries onto a new path, forcing them to really figure out their own self-interest and, in doing so, maybe even reshape the global power structure itself?